Hello everyone, welcome to Women in BIM Careers in BIM Series episode 3. My name is Rachel Strauss, and I'm the Women in BIM Regional Lead for Victoria. Thank you for tuning in today. For those who are new here, welcome, and just a quick intro of who we are, and we are Women in BIM, and we are a global initiative supporting diversity and equality in the industry. And if you're able to see our slide right now, here are our Women in BIM objectives and core values. And we're here to encourage, support, attract, promote, and advance and retain professionals in the industry. And if you'd like to know a bit more about us and about future events, more details available on our website, womeninbim.org. We kindly thank our sponsors today for supporting this initiative. So these include gold sponsors, Glider BIM and AECOM, silver sponsors i3PT and GHD, and bronze sponsor Mott McDonald. So today, which is what you're here to listen to. So the lineup today who we've got is Julia Allen, Lama Abdel, Fattah, Alieh, Ben Fox, and Dominic Holzer, which they'll give more introductions and they'll speak with us shortly. And for those who had listened to the last two series, the Women in BIM Career series, in keeping in theme with the last two episodes, we've asked questions to the audience. And today's question that we'd like to ask is, what challenges and barriers do you believe are faced in the BIM and digital engineering industry? To do that, please log on to this website called www.mentee.com. And the code here is 3905-6468. And we'll be able to add this website and code to the chat when you guys are free during the session. And we'll include answers at the end, and we can discuss and analyze the data that has been submitted. All right, without further ado, I introduce the amazing panelists that are here to discuss and share their experiences with us. So today, let's first start with personal introductions with all the panelists. And I'll get you guys to share your screen. So first up, let's chat to Ben.
Excellent. Yes, well, good morning, everyone, and glad that you could come along. And it's a pleasure to share, I guess, a few grains of salt from my BIM/digital engineering career that has certainly evolved as the industry's evolved. And what I have to say is it's such an exciting time to be in this industry, and just it's immense opportunity all around. And in terms of how I got to where I am currently as AECOM's Digital Solutions Lead for Victorian South Australia, as well as work at the level crossing, it's been quite a long road and one that was not well defined. I think that's probably a common theme of civil engineering that I didn't actually complete, and didn't realise I was actually an entrepreneur in waiting, and ended up having my own company, IGS BIM Solutions, for around 9 years before it had a partner in, and then it was acquired by a US company and then came out again. That was around BIM content, the Lego blocks that underpin a lot of this digital work that we do. And along that journey, met a lot of people before heading across at the end of my time with IGS to AECOM, where I've been looking at things like how can digital be applied to rail and road and airports and others to help business outcomes fundamentally. So it's been a long and windy journey that I look forward to sharing more about over the coming hour.
Yeah, perfect. And we love to hear all about it. All right, next up, we've got Lama.
Hi everyone. First, I would like to say thank you, Rachel, for the invitation. This is the first time for me to participate in Women in BIM. My name is Lama Alieh. My background is architecture engineer, and I was working for 9 years in industry overseas. And now I'm doing a master's degree by research at Deakin University, focusing on BIM education at Australian universities. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you so much. And next up, we've got Dominic.
Hello, everyone. Dominic Holzer. I'm Associate Professor at Melbourne Uni and also the owner of a little consultancy called AEC Connect. I've been working on the way we share information in the design sort of industry, construction industry for a number of years. I've been involved in a number of BIM committees and I've been also extensively working with education institutions in the last few years on advancing their curriculum for education in BIM. So working with Box Hill, TAFE, Swinburne, been teaching at Bond University, and of course I've been shaping also the offerings that we have for BIM education here at Melbourne Uni. In addition, I wrote this little thing called the BIM Managers Handbook. Sorry to do a bit of promotion here, but in that book it talks a lot about what we need to be considering when we become BIM managers, and I've been speaking to a number of industry people in the trenches over the past few years who really make a career in that field, and I'm happy to share some of my research, my findings, but also my face-to-face sort of encounters and anecdotes with you today.
Perfect, and we're looking forward to hearing that later today as well. So the last panelist that is going to join us is Julia Allen, which I believe she'll join us in a moment. So when she gets back in this conversation,
can you hear me?
Oh, perfect. Yes, hello, Julia.
Just logged in, sorry, I've gone around and around.
Perfect, just
technology is my friend, I promise.
Yeah, so Julia, we're just going through introductions of all the panelists. So when you're ready, feel free to join in and tell us a bit about yourself.
So my role at the moment at Hassell is I am the Revit and BIM co-lead with another colleague of mine out of Perth. I started my career in BIM a little while ago, and I got here in I did hear Ben say in a roundabout type of way. I think we've all had a interesting journey and probably quite varied and different. So I started, just working as actually an interior designer, and then kind of have worked my way through different roles and different companies, and now in the thick of things to do with BIM and the BIM industry, and I also wear, I guess, my other hat, which is part of Melbourne, which is a non-for-profit industry group as well. So I'll try and do both today.
Yeah, perfect. All right, thank you, Julia. And also another thing that I forgot to mention this morning is that we will have a Q&A at the end of this session. So if any of you guys watching today have a question, feel free to type it in, and we'll hope to answer all of those later in the session today as well. And as today's webinar is focused on careers in BIM, I guess my next question is around what a role in BIM looks like, and I guess your day-to-day role. So perhaps I would just get Julia to share with us what your day-to-day career looks like.
So my day-to-day career is quite varied. So I look after project roles. Specifically, I'm the BIM manager of the JV for the architectural joint venture for Melbourne Metro. So I kind of have looked after that. That originally was very hands-on role, very in-depth model setup, structure, processes and systems. And then that started in 2018 with the bid, so looking at contract and workflow. But I explain my role internally a bit like being a mother and picking up people's socks off the floor to make sure that they make it in the washing basket for the Wednesday washing load. Because it could be anything from, reading contracts all the way through to fixing families, helping people set up workflows, talking to contractors. It's really a vast role right through to training. And that's probably why I particularly love being a BIM lead and BIM manager.
Perfect. That's great, Julia. And I guess because we're going to have a showcase of everyone on the panel today. So next one is Ben. We'd like to hear what your role is like day to day at AECOM.
Yeah, so in AECOM, as mentioned, one of the projects I've been focused on, particularly for the last couple of years, is out at the level crossing removal project, and come across there with BIM and digital twin knowledge, but then being able to apply it to this large 75 level crossings that are probably there's one near you, I'd suggest on those on the call, and that's an amazing opportunity in an alliance model. to see all of these traditional competitors come together to work on this project that goes for in effect 10 years and combines not only level crossings but stations and rail upgrade. And you can imagine the amount of data and information flying around and different approaches to BIM. And the beauty with the role that I'm in is part of the JV between AECOM and GHD. There's a technical advisor group, and I sit in that, but am actually in effect advising in the research and development team that's client side. So it's kind of like a secondment, but it's kind of not. And within the research and development team, we're given the opportunity to look at ways of transforming the industry through different initiatives. So the one that I've been focused on for the last couple of years is underground utilities and how we can look at applying BIM and digital engineering and GIS to it, just to make the data not only be available and able to interact with it during the project, but also post, so that the data is not lost. So really different from where I started in terms of BIM content, but really the same, because all we're really trying to do is define and capture these assets in a digital sense, so we can make informed decisions on things like the level crossing removal project, but then keep that enduring asset for the state and my kids and generations to come. So day in the life of that really does revolve around a lot of stakeholder management. So speaking to different groups that don't understand digital. And in my case, I guess I've become a bit of a storyteller and educator just as much as a technician. And like Julia said, there are at times socks and other things to pick up equivalently. But for me, it's actually how you hang them out on the line and get them dried and consistently ordered. So that's a day in my life.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. And Dominic, tell us about your story.
Yeah, for me, it's a lot about understanding what people need to know. So when you enter the industry and you take on different roles, and as we already heard from others, that the BIM roles are very varied and multifaceted. I'm on the front end asking, okay, what are the competencies? What are the skills that people need to have? What are the skills on one hand that we need from an industry perspective, but also from the other end, what are the interpersonal sort of development paths that you see, and how do we educate people to get there and to be kind of valid, to be able to provide valid contributions in the industry? And when you start thinking about that, of course, the first thing that comes to mind for many is about technology and software. But once you dig a bit deeper, you realize it also has a lot to do with management, with drafting documentation skills in some instances, modeling skills, visualization skills, communication skills. Some of us might deal with data and data management. So how do you train for that? How do you teach it? How do you ensure that when you teach someone a piece of software and the industry changes and we look at different software, that the people still are able to cope, and how can they remain sort of resilient and flexible in their roles to face the fact that in this space that we are in, things are changing relatively quickly. So you don't educate someone to just be able to draft and enter the market straight away. You need to do that, yes, but you also need to educate them to have that flexibility and adaptability. So the skills that you need to sort of introduce, and the sort of the approach of training for BIM and getting ready for the industry and those roles is someone who is continuously sort of alert and flexible and understands sort of their context and goes with that flow. And that's something we might be talking about a bit later on. So, but understanding how you then develop a curriculum, and also then in some instances with my consultancy, going into practices and helping them to align what they're expecting to get out of BIM with their key industry drivers, and also then looking at more individualized training regimes within practice. So it's not just, of course, about education within the academia, but also then how do you continue to educate within practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we all can relate to that, being people in the industry too. And I guess, Lama, I guess I want to hear more about you, because I guess you're a student right now too, and you're studying all of these things as well. So tell us what your day-to-day life is like.
Yes, we are working on a research project with Dr. Reza Husseini, Dr. Igor Martek, and Dr. Ashim Shrestha. We want to find out and to assess the quality of BIM competencies of the graduates if they are work ready for BIM related tasks or if they are not. And through the lens of employers. Yes. And how can we improve BIM education to better prepare students for the future in industry?
Yeah, perfect. And would you be able to share some of like the results that you've got so far, or is it in progress, I guess, of I guess any findings?
Yes. First, we've interviewed the number of industry experts between BIM managers, BIM experts, and the digital lead to collect their perception about the graduate readiness. And we've now at the stage of preliminary analysis, let's say. So we've got positive and negative feedback according to BIM education. The positive feedback that education prepared the student for BIM as a tool, especially for design aspects tool, like scripting, coding, 3D modeling. So architect discipline at the top of the list in comparison with other disciplines. While on the other hand, there's a lack of understanding BIM as process, which is more important among the graduates. So they couldn't understand how to collaborate, how to share data, communicate, what the role of data, and all these things that related to BIM as process. And also, there is a lack of understanding the ISO and industry principles, such as ISO 19650. So in general, they are poorly prepared for BIM as process, and they are prepared for BIM as a tool.
Yeah, awesome. Those are good initial outcomes, I guess, and probably something that, I guess, you've interviewed a lot of people already in the industry that I guess it is pretty much known as well. So I guess to add to that, I guess probably next question is to you, Dominic. So I guess given the findings that Lama has presented so far just now, given your academic background in this realm, what are your future predictions or trends that we should be looking into in the BIM and digital engineering field?
Yeah, look, there is a number of things that we see already happening. As I said, it's a moving feast, and it is something we need to understand where we are going. And what the key thing that I see is that there is more outside pressures, particularly from government, for any firm who works on medium to large scale projects that have sort of public funding, that they understand that we need to take the data side more seriously. We need to understand what their facility and asset managers need to have for the ongoing operation of assets. So clients become smarter about what they want to get out of BIM. At the moment, they often talk about digital twins. They talk about LOD 500s. They very frequently don't quite understand yet what they want to get out of it. So I think there's a need from us, from the industry, to help educate them and help them realize what the biggest benefit might be out of BIM. In some instances, it's just simply to facilitate better coordination of design and interface between the architects and engineers. In other instances, it's really that interface between the consultants and the contractors. In some instances, and this is what I see happening more and more, it is a profound sort of exchange of information between the construction as design and construction sort of partners and the facility and operations sort of guys on the other end. There's still a lot of work that we need to do on that front. We see a lot of that also expanding from BIM into the more sort of digital engineering and linear infrastructure realm. We are becoming much smarter, and I hope there will be some people from linear infrastructure, some engineers and contractors, designers who work on some rail or road project as well, and we might have a lively discussion there afterwards. But there is a lot happening also in that space currently, a lot of money also going into those projects, and we need to gear up in terms of what our skill level is. And there is an expectation for us to be do more than just deliver the documentation sets and the 3D models for visual sort of purposes and documentation purposes and good coordination. I think there's more and more emphasis put now on the ongoing sort of life cycle BIM, really on the aspect where we talk about the FM side of things, where we integrate that information from the BIM world and construction world more with other data and other societal data and information. And we see many councils working on that. We see some local sort of state governments working on those requirements. And this is not just in Victoria, but of course across Australia and globally. And we need to get ready for that. And we need to have the right professionals in that space to be able to do that.
Yeah, perfect. That's definitely a great insight to what to expect, I guess. And I guess probably the next question would be in terms of like going off what Dominic has told us about what he predicts and all of that. To Ben and Julia, how do you guys stay ahead in your careers with and stay ahead of the game really in your industry? So maybe we'll start with Ben first.
Yeah, great question. And I guess to Dominic's point, I'm really at the coalface of that. Linear infrastructure meets BIM, meets GIS, traditionally those two worlds. I didn't know about GIS literally a number of years ago, but they're all intersecting. And at the highest level, they're acronyms that refer to a way of working with technology platforms underneath them. But now clients are saying, hey, we want this digital twin, LOD 500, whatever it may be, and they don't necessarily know why or what, other than it's, you know, why wouldn't you want that? Or they don't understand the cost implications of asking for, you know, one extra LOD could double the actual modeling costs and associated costs with value. But unless it's understood and educated through people like us and those on the call that are looking to work in this career as to managing expectations and understanding their business drivers, I think there's a real challenge that we all face around misaligned expectations. So I guess how does that relate to keeping abreast of the career path and keeping tabs on all of this information? Well, the long and the short is I certainly don't know everything, and I certainly am not a specialist in everything, but I become a specialist in different niches. So at the moment, say talking about utilities, I spent, you know, a fair part of the first year in looking at this challenge, understanding the people at the coalface in the supply chain. What are their issues? What are their challenges? What are the commercial drivers? How is this part of, in this case, linear construction, but does interface a bit with buildings and places at the point where it hits the street? But how does utilities work? How has it worked, and what can digital do for it? But then looking at the technology, and then finding specialists and those with domain knowledge has really helped. So I guess it's an appetite to learn is the answer, and an ability to connect in with people who I know through different forums, such as Melbourne or otherwise, or just in the BIM sector, you know, your Revit technology conferences or Built, as it's now called. It's connecting in with the right people, acknowledging what you know and don't know, and tailoring your career path and your knowledge base around the given challenges in front of you would be how I'd answer that one. Yeah,
perfect. Great answer. And I guess, Julia, for you, you're in the architecture industry, I guess, like in terms of like, I mean, obviously you're a BIM and Revit lead, but you work in an architecture firm. How do you feel that, I guess, would you be able to provide advice to us on a similar scenario? Like, how do you feel that you can stay ahead in terms of like the knowledge tracking and all of that too?
Yeah, I think it really is about building your connections and building your network. And I think, you know, we say that in every day, but I look back and, you know, part of thinking about this panel today, I look back at my experience and how I got into BIM and just how I grew my career in it, noting that when, you know, it was very organic and there was no such thing really as a BIM manager when I very, very early started out, and trying to get ahead and just understand. At the time it was just trying to understand Revit by itself, but being part of groups, going to industry events, going to, as Ben said, Built, it was really about trying to find that little bit of information that would help my project, my team or my client, and seeking that information and has a passion and enthusiasm to make it a better outcome or a better process. I you know, joke that I got into BIM because I complained that I didn't like things a lot and I didn't like the system and I didn't like the process. So it was like, well, go work out how to make it better, generally was what was put back to me. And that's how I kind of got into BIM, and I went and sought better answers for things. And it's harder now because there's so much information, and there's, you know, every project is similar but slightly different, and everyone wants to do the best BIM execution plan, the best model matrix, and get the most data they possibly can out of these models for as little possible money as possible. So it does make it more difficult, but everyone wants to, you know, produce a great job at the end, and it's really that network that will help you and help you build the information. And you know, I don't know that we ever really know if we're ahead of the crowd or better than the next, but I think if we're delivering great outcomes for our clients and we've, you know, reduced a task and made it more and streamlined the process, then it's a good outcome.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and I guess with this industry, I've found that everyone's keen to knowledge share too, so I'm sure that does help us, you know, seek answers if we do need. And I guess since we're talking about the Victorian region today, it's probably only fair to bring up VDAS, so the Victorian Digital Asset Strategy. And it's a framework that was developed or is developed by the Victorian government, which aims to enhance digital assets, particularly for BIM and digital engineering formats. And probably my next question will be guided towards Ben, because as I'm aware that you work a lot with infrastructure projects around, particularly around Victoria too. And have you found that, has this impacted or influenced you in the way, I guess, you know, before the announcement of this strategy, like the way of working?
Yeah, no, great question, and I guess it goes to that evolution piece, and where Dominic's saying around the education for clients and something to actually hang their hat on. I think if we look back to earlier in my career and others in this panelist, there was things like the BIM level 3 mandates, and just in general the UK kind of pushing mandated avenues, and then there were other BIM initiatives globally around the world. But then this Victorian Digital Asset Strategy came out a bit over probably about 2 years ago now, and it just really put a flag on the hill in terms of it being published by government, OPV and Department of Treasury. And it outlined where we should be really in 10 years at a very broad sense, and provided a split of documentation that spoke to different stakeholders within an organisation. So that was great to socialise what everyone was aiming for and some of the reasons of why and who you'd need, like a VDAS champion, et cetera, et cetera. I think on the flip side, that then raises the bar on expectations, and then you need the whole ability to actually apply that and obtain the value, and you need the granularity beneath it. And I think that's where a lot of us have stepped into that gap to help actually facilitate what that means for a given organisation. And it's great to hear that I believe, you know, OPV is looking to extend that further with recent funding late last year, I think, announced to get into that granular detail. So in short, yes, it's been a great step in uplifting the appetite and understanding that digital engineering is important, BIM is important, and we have to start applying that to our projects. The reality of what that tangibly means is being worked on by OPV. And then I also saw recently the announcement for Digital Twin Victoria, another step in that direction of centralising data for state use and becoming more of an informed buyer, the state that is, which is great for all the private sector too in how we then engage with them. And it starts to standardise it, which is great for those working up in their careers, because unlike, as Julia referenced and I've referenced, where we had to kind of chart our own course and make our own water in front of the boat, the course and directions you can head within the industry to find your niche will be a bit more well laid out and defined, which I think will only benefit those who are earlier on in their career.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely look forward to hearing more of the progress of that project. And I guess another thing to add, because like I guess, you know, VDAS it's a very loose framework. You can say, I guess it's not quite mandatory, and only really mandatory to government projects, and only, I guess, you know, if the client requests, you know, it in their own projects essentially. And I guess my next question is to you, Dominic, about standards and conventions really. Do you find as a general approach throughout the industry, like between small and larger firms, like do you find how, like if there's consistency, or how should we achieve this consistency?
Yeah, it's a good question. Maybe I want to take a step back, because I would not be surprised if many people in our audience today, for them, the whole VDAS idea and standards idea might be a bit daunting, and they might be young professionals who have either ended up in some sort of BIM role by accident, or on the other hand, might be very ambitious and definitely want to make a career in BIM. And talking about these high-level sort of concepts might be, even to the point it might be irritating, because they don't know how does it relate to my day-to-day work. I'm tasked to chirp out documentation drawings. I'm tasked to I'm always under the pump, looking at models, doing some coordination with the engineers. And I mean, I know for a fact my wife, for instance, she's a project architect, and she works in both ArchiCAD and Revit sort of extensively. And it was not by her choice. It was just simply that the fact that now this has become the key way to get out the documentation. And then she sees all the opportunities to do funky stuff now in VR. She sees opportunities to change the way she outputs the information, maybe use some scripts even to become dynamo or else to become smarter. Now, where do the standards come in all of that? I think we need to make it clear that when you work in these sort of instances, most people are very much under the pump to just spit out documentation and to facilitate that role. Some people who never really wanted to be in that role in the first place, but simply the fact because they're good at it. And this is male, female, doesn't matter. I've seen many BIM people who wouldn't even consider themselves managers who are in that role suddenly. Now, where the standards come in is that very frequently the practice leadership doesn't know what they are expecting from BIM. For them, it's just a technical add-on just to get the documentation out, and they don't realize that it is part of a bigger picture. It is part of a way to make our industry more productive, to work on data sets where when we do talk to the engineers and we do talk to the way they set up their models, it actually clicks more with our models, and we don't have to explain everything 50 times because we can refer to the LOD classification that is now universal, if you want to call it that way. We can refer to the ISO 19650, which is, if you're not used to it, it's a global standard that we have now adopted that allows us to look into BIM processes and the use of common data environments. Many people wouldn't even know where to start with a comment about what that is. And in bottom line, it's nothing else than, let's say, a smart system that allows you to manage your submissions and interaction with others in a far more sort of structured way. And I think my message would be for those to even though it might be initially a little bit daunting, to start to engage with that standardization and start to see, okay, where can we look at synergies within our practice? And it might just be 5 people, 6 people, but how can we look at synergies in the way we interact with others? How can we use some of the principles behind? Maybe we're not going full frontal ISO 19650, but there might be some points in there that we can pick up where we look at, okay, there is actually something like an information requirement that's the end goal from the client side. How would we work towards that in a succinct way? How would we then use a BIM execution plan, BIM management plan, whatever you want to call it, to achieve that? How can we be a little bit more structured instead of doing haphazardly stuff that we have to repeat again and again each project and kind of set up new each project? How can we be more structured in doing that? Because ultimately any of these standards, no matter if they're international or national, whatever, are really geared towards making your life easier and introducing more consistency. So that would be my message, to keep an eye on these standards. Not everyone will be working towards a 19650. Not everyone will have the fully fleshed sort of information requirements worked out, but it might help you in your conversation with the client to push back a little bit. And when they put an LOD 500 requirement into the project brief, you can push back and say, okay, can you tell me exactly what you mean by LOD 500? What sort of, or when you exchange information with, let's say, a mechanical contractor, you can be more specific in pointing towards the LOD specification and say, well, the kind of data that we're expecting from you, this is what we're going to model, and this is what we expect from you, and where do you see that interface happen to allow us to not over model or under model and allow you to get the best out of the information that we produce. All these sort of questions, I think these are the questions that typically happen more on the day in, day out sort of workload that people have. And the ISO 19650 or any other standards, really, they are there to help and to provide a bigger picture context. So that's how I would see it. So it shouldn't be too daunting. And yeah, so for some, there's firms like BIMCO, for instance, who help. If that becomes just too much work, there's support you can get from the industry as well, from specialists who come in and do that sort of work with you or help you on that path. Now, and this is where, of course, ultimately, yeah, it's important to understand how we collaborate with this, that when you are on your BIM journey, you're typically not alone. And in a perverse way, if we want to become better with BIM, we have to engage more with the other parties that we are working with. So the benefit for yourself is typically via the benefit that comes for the whole team. And I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah, thank you, Dominic. Yeah, definitely a lot of conversations to be had there. And yeah, thank you for the BIMCO plug. And I guess, you know, in terms of talking about conversations now, in the future and all of that, my next question, I guess, is more to what do you think the future of BIM and digital engineering looks like? So Julia, to you.
That's a great question. I think it will probably, you know, will there be BIM in the future? There may not be in the same way that it didn't exist. You know, it was CAD prior and then it became BIM, and it's a process and a system. And it's really probably looking at where the industry and where the construction industry wants to go. And then, you know, as architects, we'll follow and we'll guide and we'll push in what we're going. But it's obviously going to be more computerized, more digital, and hopefully easier. And hopefully these standards don't, you know, we just talked about the standards. The standards are difficult because everyone has their standard. It's their own standard. They'll let you know about it. And I think that hopefully things just become more organic and just part of the process. And BIM is just the everyday. It's not different on a infrastructure job versus a retail job versus a healthcare job. It's just the process that becomes embedded, and then we'll see more digital technology and different probably software and drivers of the market change over that time. And that could be, you know, I can't see the future. I wish I could. It could be anything, but I think it will be driven by people, but it will also be driven by the technology too. Absolutely. And the two of them will become more one. And hopefully things get easier.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah, and Lama, I guess, probably ask you the same question, because essentially, I guess, your own thoughts and the fact that you've interviewed a lot of people to undertake your research as well. I'm sure you've got a bit of insight from that. So what do you think the future of BIM and digital engineering looks like?
Yes, according to the industry experts' feedback, I think there's a professionalization for the digital engineering role in industry. And there is a need not just for BIM education, there is a need for digital engineering education to prepare students for the future, especially for the infrastructure projects here in Australia. So I think now there is a need to add an introduction to digital engineering and education, and give some components that support connected system integration and system interdependencies. Yes, to support the future of the digital engineering here.
Yeah, perfect. All right, so just looking at the time now. For anyone that's watching, if you've got any questions to the panelists, feel free to type it in the chat now, and then we shall be able to respond to them. But I guess what we can do in the meantime is, I guess, maybe even Ben or Dominic, if you have a questioning the future of BIM and digital engineering, what does that look like to you guys whilst we wait for more questions from the audience?
I'd love to do that and build on what Lama said there and throw it one step further. I think it would be like more digital integration will come after digital engineering. And it will literally be about how the construction industry and the stakeholders interact, just like how we navigate to go get a pizza down the road using Google Maps without giving it a second thought, as opposed to the old days of the Melways when you moved into a new suburb, working out where the pizza shop was after looking at the yellow pages. So it's just a step change in how we work. And I guess from a career perspective, it's really keeping an open mind, because you study for a period and then you start work, and it will change. What they told you, your job teachers told you about, you can have these different careers. Well, I'd suggest you probably have the same career in a space, but it's how you evolve and adapt that will set you apart, not only for career growth, but also career enjoyment. Because what's really exciting in what we get to do is to actually help architect the future, because people don't know, clients don't know. And being able to pair your technical skills, engineering, architecture, or otherwise, with the platform skills, along with the communication and soft skills, just provides you such a unique platform in this day and age that I don't believe has existed in the past, to be involved across the supply chain of building our futures, both in buildings and infrastructure. So yeah, don't necessarily expect to be told exactly what your job will look like. Seek out, mentors and others via LinkedIn and just follow what they do. Take them out for coffee, and then I would encourage you to look for gaps through asking questions, and then chase it down and get hungry to help design the future. Because even if I look back to where architects were the master builders, they're not anymore in that original sense, like they still are, say, in Europe, but they have reimagined themselves through the power of BIM and the like to provide a valuable input, and also to really whet their creative appetites in visualization and 4D and 5D animations and other things, to be able to offer more value to the client. And the same goes for engineering, and then little startups through to the big four banks pushing into the infrastructure space where the money is. Where will you sit, and what will you contribute, and how do you work out a path to get there? Because there's plenty of opportunity, but it's not going to be a door that necessarily exists today, but it probably will be there tomorrow. So how do you get a step closer to that door?
Yeah, absolutely. So just a few questions. Sorry, Dominic, I might get you to answer.
A very, very brief run from my end. I think what we will see is a lot more prefab. We will move away from 2D documentation drawings to far more automation, and going from the model straight to fabrication, assembly, and installation in the coming years, which means when we look at site, we're going to look at more automation there as well, and autonomous systems, autonomous vehicles, more interface, as we heard from Ben earlier, with the geospatial information, geospatial data, bidirectionally. So it's also Internet of Things, of course, sensing data, more interface between physical and virtual sort of representation of our built environment. And now when it comes to the career, then I think if you are in the BIM space, it's really asking yourself, okay, do I want to become specialized? I think specialization would be something that for me has always shown the best career opportunities. Where do I want to become an expert? What do I want to become an expert in, and how do I specialize? What skills do I need? We did talk about data a lot today, and the need to interface data. And I think there's a massive gap out there in the industry in doing that right. We're still doing far too much manual labor. And it starts really with, in your role, asking, okay, what are the repetitive tasks that I currently go through, that if I had some way to automate that, or some way to work with technology supported, it helps me to speed this up. What little scripts would I need to write, or what software would I need to get in? What interfaces would I need to establish, either within my own organization or with others, and different workflows that I need to build around those to achieve that. And I think for me as a BIM manager, or as a person involved in BIM, that will be one of the key things to look for going towards the future.
Yep, perfect. Yep. And yeah, just some questions have come through on the discussion. So first one, how do we promote more diversity in BIM to address our skill shortages globally? I guess perhaps maybe Julia, could you answer a question? Like, how do we promote more diversity in BIM?
So I guess it's towards the idea of females in BIM, being this is a women's in BIM event, I'm assuming. Look, I think that construction as a whole is more male driven for history reasons. Probably it's always been that way. I think there are some spectacular women in BIM, and actually I think they are engaging and absolutely, they are stunning advocates for the BIM industry, because I think that women in BIM, I don't think it's a gender thing. I think it's just, you've got to be quite tough as part of this role, and you have to be really quite strong and convicted to pushing through. And I think that's hard for some people to do, and I think that women tend to be a little bit shyer in that kind of role. But I think that BIM is just, I don't think it's necessarily a gender thing, but being diverse, I think it's being diverse in all sectors. I think we are diverse. I think if you look at our background, you look at, you know, I've known Ben for quite a few years, you look at where we both came from. We've come from very different kind of backgrounds and got into the industry because we're passionate about it and we drive it, have driven it, and for ourselves, and because we're passionate in the change that BIM has brought to the industry. So I think that it will naturally happen that the best people will rise to the top, and I don't think it necessarily has to be gender driven or about that sort of, you know, making sure that we've got the right quota or the right number, and that's just my personal view on it. But I think that, you know, the industry will change and keep on changing, and it will be great to see where it goes in the future. And I think that, yeah, there are some amazing people out there, and getting out and about and hearing from them is important as well.
Yep, perfect. All right, awesome. And probably another question that has come in right now. So what would your advice be to architects and engineers looking to transition to BIM today? As discussed, it was very different from many of us who have made the move 5+ years ago in a roundabout way. So who would like to answer that question in the panel? I guess maybe Ben, because I guess...
yeah, from an engineering firm. Depend on the scale of the engineering firm. And I found it fascinating looking at AECOM through the eyes of coming from a startup to then a large multinational. And there's the same amount of opportunity for, I'll call it entrepreneurship, and don't get scared off by those words. It's just creative thinking within the scope and remit that you find yourselves. So if you're within an engineering firm that has a digital engineering department or an area or a person, you know, a girl or a boy, get to know them and what they do, and through your engineering or architecture discipline, show an interest, because it's fascinating speaking to the digital engineers. Often the divide or the lack of inclusion happens just culturally because engineers and draftees have not necessarily got as engaged with each other as they could to see project outcomes. So I would say the opportunity is right there in front of you. Get to know your digital engineering team, take an interest, and then an engineer that has digital engineering skills, I would say is a very powerful entity, particularly in the platforms like Revit and otherwise that we're now using. You actually have to now know how to build a building. So that will put you in good stead. You can't fake it. You can't dimension override it, at least easily, nor should you. So yeah, you have a leg up. The trick then is to chart your value in that and not start again at the bottom within your given organization, but to develop a hybrid role where you add value across the supply chain from your bidding through to your delivery and ultimately the engineering of the design outcome that your firm is delivering.
Yeah, perfect. And does anyone else have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's, you know, what Ben said is chart, you know, your career and what will you bring to the digital engineering group. A lot of people assume because we're BIM managers, we're most technically advanced at Revit or whatever the software of choice might be, but being a BIM manager is also being able to lead people and also look at workflows and train people. And it's not just I'm technically gifted and I know how to put a building together and I can model very well and I know how to extract data. There's different levels of BIM managers across, especially across Hassell. We've got quite a few BIM managers and project BIM managers, and they all bring something different to the table. And that could be a leadership skill, it could be a technical skill, it could be a technical knowledge skill. And so there are different BIM managers, and they are all BIM managers, but they just offer different skills and different abilities. So I would, if you're looking at moving into that role, I would say, well, what will you bring to your team and what, you know, difference do you bring as well? So it will help build it from a career perspective and for the company.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you for that.
I would maybe add sorry, but Lama, do you want to go first? Sorry.
No.
No, you're good. I'm just going to provoke a little bit. I'm going to say, don't get into BIM or digital engineering. And it sounds maybe a bit weird. Of course, I think it's really aligned with what we just heard from Julia and Ben. It's more about your career. Where do you want to be in your career? What do you want to do professionally? Because BIM and digital engineering is maybe a vehicle to get you there, but it's not. I don't think you want to get into it. It's not the end goal. It's not. I think it's really much more about, professionally speaking, do you want to be in a role where you manage information? Do you want to be in a role where you coordinate information across different sort of stakeholders? Do you want to be in a role where you help facilitate documentation output, or where you want to be a great project architect, project engineer? I think typically the career path that I've seen that people are taking is not necessarily driven by BIM or digital engineering itself. It's rather driven by where you see those industry roles and how BIM or digital engineering can support you in doing that and going there. Not sure everyone agrees with that, but the end goal for many is not to be a BIM manager. The end goal is to help a practice sort of be as efficient as possible in the way they document their projects. And again, the technology surrounding it is then the vehicle. And as Julia said earlier, this whole BIM context is really changing, and you need to be flexible and adaptable. And the best people that I've seen in the industry, they're just genuinely curious, and they're genuinely driven, and they do understand the role that technology plays, digital engineering, BIM, whatever it is, to help support really best practice approaches and help shape what best practice actually means. But because all these roles are so different, you might want to be really clear on what your career aspirations are. And as a next step, then think about how BIM or digital engineering can help you to get there.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Dominic.
Yes.
Yep, go for it, Lama.
Yes. I think there is education responsible to do that, especially if there's according to the improvement of BIM education, if they can add specialties and accreditation, so students can choose their career path according to their preferences and according to their capabilities. So, and those specialties much align with the role in industry. So if there's like a BIM manager role and there's a skill set related to this, so education equipped students for the skill sets related to each role in industry. Yes.
Yep, perfect. Thank you for that. I guess I'm just looking at the list of the questions, and I think we've covered everything that has been asked today. I guess we will go back to our first question that we've put to the audience today. What challenges, barriers do you believe are faced in the BIM and digital engineering industry? So I've got some results here that I'd love to share, and we can showcase what the most popular answers are in here. Here we go. So from what we can see, opportunities and communication seem to be the barriers that I guess the audience believed are faced in the BIM and digital engineering industry. Does anyone in the panel agree or disagree with these thoughts, I guess?
I'm agreeing to disagree. So I agree with communication and on
Very
your
political
career journey.
answer.
Yeah, agreeing to Lama's point, equip yourself with not just the technical skills, because the number of people that I've heard, at a coffee or a lunch talk about why it's not fair or why they can't find an opportunity, to the other point, when they're looking at the problem wrong, they're not looking at how they can bring their unique perspective to solve a company or a given organization or person's challenge. They're looking at wanting a job. So I would say learning how to communicate your why, and if you haven't looked at the Simon Sinek, start there, start with why, and then consider that as your path to finding opportunities, because we're in a state particularly and in a country that's experiencing a construction boom where there's a shortage of digital engineers and BIM managers and the like. And if you can communicate what you know in a succinct way and be able to back it up technically by underpinning with the foundations that are available through the education system, there really is nothing stopping you. other than getting out there to things like Melbourne and other events like you're in this one today, to get to know those in the industry. And before you know it, you'll be part of the family and not just working, you'll be really enjoying the journey and leaving a legacy.
Absolutely. And it's a great family to be part of too, I have to add to. All right, so looks like that's all we've got time for today. So I guess next role updates. The next event that we've got lined up, episode 4, is in Queensland. So yeah, and this event is going to be conducted in 2 months' time, September 8th, hosted by our regional lead, Alieh, and she'll be chatting to the panelists here that you can see on the screen today. And more information about registration for the event will be, you know, on our socials, on Women in BIM, and you'll see it, I'm sure, flying around on LinkedIn like this event too. All right. I think that's all we've got time for today, and thank you for participating in this event. And a big thank you to all the panelists today for sharing their wise words with us and giving us personal insight into your journeys into the industry that we've got here. And I'm sure we've all taken away something from this session. And as you can see on this page now, please keep in touch with us. So you can do it a few ways here on by email, info@womeninbim.org, or yeah, you can also sign up to be a member on our website. So membership details are down below. And yeah, keep in touch on our socials. And see you all next time. Thank you so much for today. Bye.
Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.